Joining us today on 4029 News on the Record are the Senate candidates for U.S. Senate on the Democratic Party. The nominee is Natalie James. She joins us today on 4029 News on the Record. Natalie, thank you so much once again for joining us here today on our program. Let's get to the issues straight off.
Right.
Do you think the federal government should have some exceptions for abortion? For example, Arkansas is one of the strictest anti-abortion laws in the country. Should the federal government intervene and have some type of exceptions?
So when we talk about exceptions, we have to understand that with abortion, it's not an abortion. Abortion is to clear the uterus. We have to use the actual correct terms. What we're talking about is women's reproductive health care. We should not have to have an exception to have reproductive health care. Nobody should be in our health care. It's nobody's business. Health care between a doctor and a woman, it's their business, and it's our job to trust women. So what we're going to do and what I plan on doing, I will advocate to make sure that women have their voices, have the health care, the full health care that they need for whatever needs and whatever services. When we talk about the types of healthcare it is, you have a DNC that's also classified as an abortion. But a lot of times you have miscarriages, and these are people trying to have children. I'm a retired surrogate. I've had to have a DNC myself, and if I didn't have that healthcare, that retained fecal matter in me, fetal matter could have hurt me, could have killed me, and given me sepsis, and then it would have taken me away from my two girls. So we have to think about this as healthcare. This shouldn't be up for debate. We're still debating healthcare in general for everybody in the United States, but this is also a part of healthcare, and we shouldn't be excluding it, period. So I'm glad, and I'm hoping to see that we're going to have more federal protections to better protect everybody's right to be unabridged. Because keep in mind, there are a lot of families where they could have one accidental pregnancy and it could put them into poverty. People are living paycheck to paycheck, and these are decisions that shouldn't be taken lightly and shouldn't be stripped away from everyday citizens who are just trying to live and be a working class citizen and have a nice life. We shouldn't be taking away people's rights, our health care.
Let's talk about the military budget. Last time we talked, which was a couple of months ago, you said the military budget is too big. Do you still feel the same way about that, especially with what's going on with Ukraine and Russia? Should the United States intervene in any way, or are we doing the proper amount of war, kind of standing back and sending aid?
Well, we're doing the proper amount. Me personally, I don't want to see us to enter into a wartime or World War III possibly, or anything else of that far stretch. Again, that's the doom and gloom. I don't really want to focus on the doom and gloom, but that is a possibility if we overextend ourselves. We have enough things here at home that we need to be taking care of, such as corporate greed and things like that, and making sure that the actual citizens of America are taken care of. Now, when it comes to military, we're seeing where our administrations, they have a higher payroll than the actual active employee. Now, I support my military wholeheartedly, but when you have an E in front of your name, you're not being paid the same. So I do believe they should be able to reallocate a lot of the funds and provisions that they do use to make sure that their soldiers and their families are taken care of. But I also do feel that we should cut some of the budget where we have too much discretionary spending, and it's not spent on the actual soldiers, it's spent on actual other things that we don't really need to be spending on right now.
What do you think about the president's college student loan debt forgiveness program?
I am so for it. We have seen where we have the wolves of Wall Street and wolves in suits clothing propagating and pushing their issue for their friends, their colleagues, and coworkers, receiving PPP loans to where people write 14 and 15 articles on their websites about these PPP loans and how it should be more flexible and forgiving. But when it comes to actual working class citizens, single mothers like me, are people who were told that you need to go to school in order to have a job, instead of told about technical and trade schools and vocational schools and other means without acquiring those student loans, and weren't given those options. We're taking that away. We have to look at this like Senator Joyce Elliott said. This is making sure that when you're driving on a highway and and you have highways all across the state. I might not be driving on the highway in Jonesboro or in Mena, but I want to make sure that that highway works if I decide to go on it, and I want to make sure that the people have what they need to have the transportation and resources. So when we're talking about student loan forgiveness, we're not talking about we're not talking about just giving away money to corporations to burn and continue to increase their profits, and we have to suffer from corporate greed inflation. We're talking about taking care of the people so that they can better take care of themselves, because when they can take care of themselves, it leaves less for the government to have to come in and step in and do.
Okay, well, let's talk about the government's role in Title IX. Big debate, who should be allowed to play girls' sports and who should be allowed to play boys' sports?
When it comes to whatever you identify, whoever you identify, it is not our job to dictate people. It's not our job, again, to tell somebody their body autonomy. It's not our job to be in somebody else's business that is, again, between a doctor and that person. Now, again, when we say, and I go back to healthcare and we go back to women's healthcare, any person with a uterus that needs reproductive health care needs to be able to have that access unabridged. And the same when it comes to decisions made between that person and that entity with their doctor and whoever it may be. It is not our business, and we should stay out of it.
All right, Natalie, in about 30 seconds or less, why should voters vote for you versus the other two candidates?
Well, it's time for some generational change. It's time to have a more inclusive legislative assembly. It's time to have people who are going to advocate for all of Arkansas, all of America, and everybody. Right now, we currently are left out, and we are currently sitting in the bottom rungs of everything wrong and sitting in the top things. Really, we're not even sitting in the top things here in Arkansas, and we've already seen their track record as to what they've done in the last 20 years in the legislature. It's time for a change, and if you want change, you're going to have to vote for James on November 8th, and early voting starts October 24th.
All right, Natalie James, a U.S. Senate candidate with the Democratic Party. Thank you so much for joining us today on 4029 News on the Record.
Thank you.